All right, team. We are back in the Fireside PM podcast, and I have an old colleague from, seems like many moons ago. Alden Desoto. We both worked at Google, and he and I intersected the first time I was at Google, which was like back around 2006 or 7 in that neighborhood. And he's working on some cool stuff. So I thought it'd be fun to have him on the show. So welcome to the pod, Alden. How are you?
Thanks. Super excited to be here and talk about the journey and Docs Writer and all that good stuff.
Yeah, man. Why don't we start with a quick intro to yourself? Like tell us about who you are.
Yeah. So I am. I was a technical writer at Google, and I had a team. I built a couple of teams actually at Google while I was there, and I left Google about 6 months ago. And then I had started. I built a ranch. My wife and I built a ranch in Bend, Oregon, 40-acre ranch. We had horses back in 2014, and so I kind of got a 6-year jump on the remote work trend. I was actually one of the first 2 people to work remote in tech at Google, and so that was really great. I was happy to be able to do that. But yeah, so fun fact. And then let's see, about 2 months ago, my wife and I decided we sold our ranch. My son we're empty nesters now. My son has moved out of the house, and we thought, we've always wanted to move to New Orleans. So tomorrow is our 6-week anniversary of living in New Orleans. So big changes over here, and that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Well, what that's quite a change from owning a ranch to then moving to the Big Easy. That ranch sounds pretty amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was an amazing thing. We built it from scratch. And it was wonderful to work from there. It was like our own private retreat.
Oh my God.
And so it was, the nice thing, it was just an hour away from Silicon Valley by flight, and there were 5 flights a day, so I could easily get down to, the Bay Area. But the ranch was amazing. We had horses. We had. It was just an idyllic life, and it was really great to be able to raise my son there. He grew up riding horses and shooting arrows off of horses,
and were you caring for the horses, or did you have like people that?
No, we had. So my wife is a big horse person, and so she was the primary. We all rode, and so we. But they were our horses, and they were right there. We took care of them. It's a lot of work taking care of horses. Anybody thinking about getting horses, it's fun. It's amazing. They're amazing animals, but boy, is it a lot of work.
Yeah, I was backpacking in Yosemite last week, and there was like a whole train of horses that work for, I think, the National Forestry Service or National Park Service. They're just such majestic animals. They're beautiful, majestic animals.
Amazing. Yeah. They're really amazing. And they teach you a lot too, about leadership and about, because they're herd animals. They're big. They're scared of everything, and you gotta lead, when you're handling a horse. You got to really be in charge. You have to, they have to feel secure. So it's actually a great, like riding a horse, taking care of a horse is a wonderful exercise and sort of, it's a kind of leadership.
Yeah. Well, now you're in New Orleans, which is an amazing city from what I've heard. It must be a very different kind of environment. And how has that transition been?
Yeah, so it is. So we've been here 6 weeks, and it's been a huge transition, moving from open space, 40 acres,
Right.
you know, um, riding horses, to living in very urban. Like, we live in the Garden District in New Orleans, which is not far from the French Quarter. So there's a lot, and there's a lot of noise. But I think the most confusing thing, my dog is most confused. Because he grew up being master of his domain.
Oh yeah.
He's a ranch dog,
Yeah.
and he's a kind of border collie, and he's just runs around. He's hardly ever on leash. He used to never be on a leash. Used to chasing horses and going on long rides with us. And then now he's in this concrete. We live on a corner, and he like looks out. I let him out the front door, and he sits there and just kind of like, what have you done?
I know a little bit about how you feel in that I spent 4 years in Zurich, Switzerland, but we lived in the outskirts of Zurich in some kind of rural farming areas. And our dog at the time basically was a puppy and grew up there and would run through the hills, like the Sound of Music. And then we moved back to the States, and now she goes, we're living the suburban life, and I'm sure she misses it. But there's good things about every place you live, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just, for me, it's just really super, super new. I mean, we literally landed here 6 weeks ago, and it's just, so it's going well. It's a big change. I'm still in culture shock.
No, it's good to mix it up. It's kind of like study abroad. You're like changing your environment. And had you been thinking about starting a business at the same time of the move, or has that happened recently, or were you already far along on that before you moved over to New Orleans?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I first got the idea. I took Amit Badlani's course, who you interviewed, I think, a few months ago.
Yeah.
And he ran, I think he's running one soon, actually, another one. But I was in his summer cohort for ML Foundations for Product Managers. And because I've been super interested, I'm super interested in AI and generative AI applications. One of the last things I did at Google was train a Gen AI support bot, basically to answer questions about Google Analytics. And I really love that. I loved, that whole process. It's so interesting. And so, but I hadn't thought about the idea for Docs Writer, had not come to me yet. And so, I think then I took, let's see, that was probably like in April or May, I was in Amit's course, and I started to put some different sort of things together. And I just, the idea came from, I started to put some experiences together, which I'll talk about, and then some ideas along with this course. And I don't know, it just kind of came to me in a flash. And so I've only been doing this for 4 months. And it's like, it's not even really at the business phase yet, because I'm essentially designing the product through iteration and sort of do like throwing stuff out there, getting feedback, and figuring out like what the product requirements are going to be.
How would you describe the problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah. So the problem, there are sort of two separate problems that are kind of, maybe sort of are orthogonal, but they're related in my mind. One is that there's a sort of a perception, especially among tech writers, that the production of documentation, user guides, is the work. It's actually not the work, in the sense it's it's an artifact of the work. It is, so for example, it's in the same way that a UX designer, their job is not to create Figmas. Their job is to do the thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and that manifests as Figmas. You have to have the Figmas, you can't build the product, right? But it's not the work. And so there's a process that has to happen, just like in design, there's a process that has to happen when you're writing educational content. And that process has to, like, what does the user really need to be successful? And specific, and that is what's going to drive adoption for this product, and what's also going to make it serviceable. Like, what's going to make it so that you don't have to hire a lot of support folks, right? That it sort of maintains. So there's just this one sort of thing about, like, the problem where I think the work of technical writing is fundamentally misunderstood by everyone, and tech writers included. The second thing is that there's this tendency, this sort of trend to take the production of user docs, and not just user docs, like developer docs too, like it could, or administrator docs, like any kind of sort of end user documentation, right? And move it to where you can hire content editors, or you can hire writers who are part of some operations team, and there's just cheaper locations.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense, right? From a business perspective. I mean, you might think like, well, we need docs, let's do it cheaper. Let's find a cheaper way to do this than have expensive tech writers. But the problem here is that it exacerbates the first thing I was talking about, is that it confuses the work with the actual work with the artifact of the work. And so the problem is that docs are now, what you see is they're moving away from product teams and out of the control of the product team to some team who doesn't really understand the product.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if I play that back, what I'm hearing is, number one, like the same way software engineers, they're not there for the code. The code is kind of like the output.
Yes.
But the real value add is how they're thinking about architecting it and kind of solving these problems. And then it manifests itself at the last mile in the code they write.
Yes.
Similarly, for tech writers, the FAQ or the help topic, that's the last step in the process. That's not where the value is really being added.
Yeah.
So I got that. And then I think the second part I got was that in this world where companies are looking to be more financially efficient, it is very tempting to offshore a lot of the tech writing, but actually that exacerbates the problem because the value added work has to happen kind of very close to the product development process.
Yes, that's exactly spot on. And I think that this is kind of, I think DocsWriter, which is, it's a generative AI tech writer, which I'm positioning as a partner to PMs, to product teams. This is a sort of a way to say, okay, well, I hear you. You want to go cheaper, but at the same time, we need to bring this back into product teams. So here's a way to maybe do that. Let's bring in a generative AI partner, tech writing partner, that can actually work directly with the product team and help the product manager and other folks on the product team sort of do the actual work. And if you have a tech writer, that's great. It's still usable. This is still a good solution. But make sure that the work, that all the right questions are being asked, and it has this side effect of and it's also a very cheap way of producing your documentation, because you don't have to hire a person. You have this generative AI entity that's writing it for you.
So let's give an example. Let's say I'm a PM and I'm working on some new feature for we'll go back to the good old days, like for GA or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's this new report about something, and I say, okay, normally I would be like, okay, the thing is getting pretty close. It's maybe with trusted testers, like we should start thinking about documentation. And then you'd look for your tech writer and be like, hey, this thing's coming along. What would be the process in the docs writer AI world? How would that, how would it work?
Yeah. And so I'll tell you how it works today in my pilot and where we're going. So today, you as the PM could just provide your PRD, and then from there, DocsWriter has what it needs to give you a good, solid draft of the documentation, which is, you probably would want to edit, and a PM would probably want to, work with. But the nice thing about it, right, is that you didn't have to go and send this off to an editorial team that maybe sits many time zones away and who doesn't understand, and so in a sense, a lot of the sort of the work, a lot of the thought process has already been done in the PRD. For example, the PRD contains information about I want to say like use cases, but it's maybe often user stories, right? It's common to include user stories, like how different scenarios in which people are going to use this. And so DocsWriter can then take those scenarios and say like, oh, and come up with examples that are, clear and make sure that's part of the documentation. So that's the sort of process that works today in the pilot. You can feed it your PRD and it will do these things.
Okay.
Longer term, though, I think there's more. The opportunity really is for DocsWriter to make sure that it's asking, that all the right questions are asked, because some things, for example, might not be in the PRD, right? That need to be asked. Like some things maybe, well, there might be nuanced things about the example, or there might need more information, like really about the different scenarios, or what's the real value add. And there are also, questions like what's most important for people to understand so that they don't overwhelm support lines, for example, or, what is the barrier to adoption? Like what are the highest friction points? These are questions that a good tech writer, a human tech writer, should ask, right? And should be looking for, working on the product team. And so I think DocsWriter can then ensure that those questions are being asked.
Yeah. That makes sense, because as I reflect, whenever I've worked with writers in the past, number one, my PRDs are usually a little bit obsolete because that's the thing that we originally wrote and then we kind of iterated on it. And so there's that issue. And then the second one is that I often remember cases where the writer would say, oh, well, what about this scenario? And I'd be like, oh, shoot, I didn't think about that. I'm not sure how we should handle that. Yeah. So there is a little bit of that consultative approach that you get with a writer. I guess one thing that comes to mind is, how is what you're envisioning different from a PM, opening up ChatGPT in another tab and uploading his PRD and saying, hey, write me a help topic on this, and then tweaking it himself, right there?
So that's a great question. It's actually some of the feedback that I've gotten folks from PMs already since I soft launched this 10 days ago. So it's similar, and maybe today it's actually, I'll say maybe it's not even that much better than what you could do. I'll just say that maybe. But where we're going, very quickly will be, there are a lot of things that, well, first of all, like the instructions, right, that DocsWriter has are far more detailed and take into account best practices and things that a PM probably wouldn't want to take the time to provide, and probably wouldn't think to provide, because they're not a tech writer, and they just so DocsWriter is more expert than bare ChatGPT, for example. I mean, it is today. I'm just saying, like, today it's like there's it's going to rapidly get much better, but full disclosure, today it's probably just a little better. And so, but then we'll also be adding things like style guides and templates that you wouldn't have, right? A PM wouldn't have. So there'll be built-in ones that we can derive from existing Google Docs or Cisco Docs or whatever company, right? So these can be built in, certain standards, and then I think also like also with the ability to add your own if you want. So for example, if you have a tech writer on your team, they can create a style guide of their own and upload it into, and then DocsWriter can use that as well. So I think there's, and then another piece, if you think of like Figma has great sharing. Part of what makes Figma so powerful, right, is the sharing capability. And so I sort of take that as an inspiration. That's where I'd like to take DocsWriter, where you sort of have a shared workspace. And so, it's not just you, it's like multiple PMs are, sharing that they're using the same style guides. They're all, sort of writing from the same playbook. And I think, what else? Yeah, there's another thing that just skips my mind at the moment.
It'll come to you.
Yeah,
I think the interesting thing about this topic is clearly Gen AI should be able to help people write technical documents. Like, if anything, writing is one thing that LLMs can do already pretty well. It's you don't have to imagine it, right?
Yeah.
And clearly, you can imagine a world where, okay, yeah, we're gonna have to revisit how that process that works. You don't have to have a very expensive, person living in the Bay Area, full-time writer. Like those days are probably going away, or we'll need less of them.
Yeah.
Totally, I'm with you there. I think that the theme that I hit, especially as a person who's been thinking lately about starting a company, and also as a small angel investor looking at now hundreds of deals, I think the big question I often come up against is the biggest competitor to this venture a very smart knowledge worker who's comfortable playing around with ChatGPT on their own. And maybe they're not going to get like the collaboration features, but they can kind of hack it using Google Docs collaboration, or they're not going to get the style guy, but they can kind of like do a workaround for that. And then they don't have to learn a new tool. It's just another tab with ChatGPT, 4.0 open. How do you think about having that gap be big enough to justify someone taking a chance on DocsWriter versus doing the DIY approach?
Yeah. So I mean, if I'm hearing it correct, I mean, this is similar to your question earlier, right? About like how what's the difference between this and bare ChatGPT? I think so. In order for this to work, it has to be demonstrably better.
Yes.
And I mean, like, because you as a PM, if you have a tool that does the job, like it's already there and you don't have to do, why would you try to build something that already exists? So I think that's, and this will be much better, I think, for the reasons I said earlier, this kind of It's just got way better instructions. The output is going to be just much more helpful. But also, what you can't do with bare ChatGPT is you won't think, like, you don't really have. You can create a writer, but you won't create a partner.
Mm-hmm.
The partner has a dialogue. You and I, like if you and I are working together on something, right? Like I can say to you, like, what have you thought about this use case? Or have you thought about this? Or, I will ask you things that you wouldn't have thought of, right? And I think that sort of partnering process to help you as a product owner, easily produce the docs that you need. I think the docs are going to be way better than anything that a writer is going to spit out. Because essentially, if you think about it, if you just go with bare ChatGPT and you know a lot about, and you know exactly what you need, and you go, I can prompt this thing and I can upload the doc. I can make this. I can make a custom GPT that will do this. Okay, but all you're doing is duplicating what the writer who sits on the content strategy team, like far away, is doing. You're making the problem. You're just perpetuating the problem, which is that person doesn't really understand. They're not interacting with you and asking the right questions. First of all, they're in another time zone, so you may not get a chance to talk to them, and they're busy with a lot of other stuff. So they're thinly spread. They're not an expert on your product. The difference with a partner is a partner wants to become expert on your product. And so that's where I see this going, is the partner aspect, not just a writer.
Yeah. And I would imagine if and when you build it out, you can do it in such a way that it really does develop an expertise about your product and how you're thinking about things. So it's, and it sounds like there'll be some kind of interactive back and forth approach versus just jamming it all into a big prompt kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the current thing that you see today, if you sign up and use it or watch the video, you can see that, it looks like what you're describing in the sense of like, well, I could just do that on ChatGPT. But this is a starting point, and I mean, it speaks to I think this is a good point to make, because we're talking about the process, right, of creating a startup and creating an idea, right? Is like, my approach is to make something that we can pick apart and have these kind of conversations.
Yeah.
I think it's a great thing to make this thing and then have someone come back and say, I could do this with bare ChatGPT. And the fact that that's feedback that I've received. I could do this on bare ChatGPT. Great. Thank you for that feedback. So that's, because it gets the process going. So the idea is to sort of I think, make something and throw it out there, and let's poke holes in it and say what's got to be better.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about a MITS class. Like, what did you learn from it that you're applying to this venture?
Yeah. So it's funny. Although I got the idea in Ahmed's class, I don't know that there's any particular thing that I learned. I think it was maybe the community, honestly. Some of the conversations we had. Ahmed's class is very much very much around machine learning, and this is so it's sort of separate. I mean, obviously related to Gen AI, but it's a little different. But maybe one of the things we talked about was RAG, right? Which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, right? Yes. And I think that might have been, we talked about RAG, and I think I started putting together a couple of things. This isn't like an obvious RAG solution, but it might become one. Yeah. So I think that's where, if I were to pinpoint one thing we talked about, that probably came around then.
Yeah, and are you thinking like the augmentation would come from maybe your existing help documents,
Yeah,
or yeah?
that is, and that was the thing that I couldn't remember earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Is that needs to happen is it needs to become aware of your current corpus of content and gradually learn more and more about your product, right? Because it doesn't help. Like, it's pretty hard to write for anybody to write a help center article, for example, if you don't know what's already out there. It might say like, you don't need this, or
Mm-hmm.
really all you need to do is add a sentence to this other thing over here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, or at least refer to a couple other topics that are relevant.
Yeah.
For sure. Now, Alden, are you still looking for people, for PMs out there to test, or
I
do you have
am.
enough testers so far, or how are
No,
you
I'm
feeling?
always looking for feedback. So yeah, any PMs out there, I'd love to hear you take a look. I mean, if you're not, you can just watch the video or or try it out. I just want to hear feedback.
Yeah, is the video public? Is it
It
available
is.
online?
It's right on the. If you go to docs-writer.ai,
Docs-writer.ai.
that's right. That's the website. Maybe I can
Uh-huh.
put that in here. Maybe I'll put it in the chat. Let's see.
Yeah, I'll share my screen here. I think I found it. And then watch the video.
Exactly. Yeah. It's 2 minutes. Yeah.
Busy PM and you need docs for your launch. Maybe you have a writer, but they sit on a team far away and they don't really understand your product. This is something AI could do. Let me show you how with Docs Writer. Start by signing up. You can interact with Docs Writer just as you would a human tech writer. The fastest way to get your docs done is to give Docs Writer your PRD. Most PRDs are pretty long, so your send button might disappear. To get it back, Control minus or Command minus to reduce the font size until the send button reappears. And then Control plus or Command plus to increase the font size back to where it was. DocsWriter writes the user guide, including FAQs and troubleshooting. This isn't just for user guides. DocsWriter will also write an admin guide and developer guide if those are needed. At the end, you'll get feedback on what additional information you could include to make the docs better. If you need your docs translated, DocsWriter will do that as well. And DocsWriter will write your marketing copy. If you want DocsWriter to take another stab at the copy, click the refresh button. The copy button gives you the output and markup format. You can then use your favorite markup editor to generate HTML, text, or some other format. DocsWriter is in pilot phase right now, and I'm making regular updates. So please let me know what improvements you'd like to see, and thanks for watching.
All right. First of all, very clear instructions. I guess
as you expect from a technical writer.
Even hey, if you can't find the send button, this is how you find it back.
Right.
That's super cool. So if PMs want to give it a try, do they just contact you on the website on docs-writer.ai, or how do they
just sign up? So you just click the sign up button and give it your email, or give it any email you want, and then just give it create a password, and you can and then you can start playing with it.
Yeah,
and it'll remember. You can log out and log back in, and it'll remember all your history, so you can keep going if you're.
Now, under the hood, is there some OpenAI API usage here, or what's running this?
Yeah. So under the hood, it's just it's using the OpenAI APIs.
Mm-hmm.
So Currently, it's free. I'm paying for the API usage, but thankfully, it's not super expensive at all. It's perfectly reasonable, and so it's talking to an open AI assistant on the back end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. And if you kind of fast forward, what's your plan going forward for the venture? What do you need to see for you to keep kind of plowing ahead, or what are some kind of milestones you're looking to hit to ensure that
Yeah.
the thing's going places?
So I think the bottom line is always adoption, right? With any new product, right? Can you get the adoption, people using it? If people aren't using it, there's something wrong, right? You're not doing the right, you're not solving the problem, or you're doing the wrong thing. So that will take some time, but I'm just what I'm doing right now is just I'm getting some great feedback from folks on like, hey, I'd like to see this. I'm getting wish lists. I'm getting like, concerns, everything. And so I am adding. First, I'm sort of addressing like some wish list stuff that people want, and making sure that we're pulling well ahead of what you can do with bare ChatGPT, right? To speak to your earlier point, and once it starts to like if I'm getting the usage, getting the adoption, then I can see like, okay, I'm onto something here.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's like time to. Then at that point, I think I can really create. Excuse me. Really, what the product requirements need to be to really productionize this. Because right now, I think of this as like it's a pilot.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Super exciting. We have a comment in the live chat actually from Alexander saying, hey, maybe pull in the source code because those PRDs, they deviate from what's actually in prod. And they do become kind of the shelf life of a PRD is pretty short sometimes.
That's a really great point, and I actually hadn't thought of it. And like, I think, and you mentioned it earlier, Tom, like, PRDs get out of date. So what do you do then? It's like, and so, maybe so. Yeah. Sourcing from production code, maybe that could work. I'll have to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or at least a combination of the two. Maybe that, if you have the PRD and the source code, it might identify areas where it's like, hey, PRD says this, but the source code actually does this. And that'll have a fun conversation between the PM and the TL.
Exactly.
Or it's like, oh, if you just look at the source code, it may not have enough context, but if you just look at the PRD, it doesn't have enough detail. So that could be fun. My advice would be, I think the litmus test is if we took 10 prompts, 10 different help topics that we produced, and we did 10 using DocsWriter and 10 using bare bones ChatGPT, people should pick the DocsWriter one as the superior one, in like kind of blind taste test kind of thing.
That's a great test. I love it. Yeah.
And if you're beating bare GPT and in the bare GPT, you have to do it like you have to pull the best out of it. You can't like purposely give it like crappy prompts,
Yeah.
But if you can beat bare GPT 7 out of 10 times, then I think you could say like, look, this is just, you can use the free off the shelf thing, but why would you do that? Your product's too important. We're like the business class.
I love it. Where would you source? So where would you sort of source the source material from?
Well, what you could do is, with permission from your current users, you could say, hey, look, use DocsWriter. And then what you do is you try and replicate it on bare GPT and see what it outputs.
Yeah.
And then you could provide it to the user, say, oh, by the way, I did this on the side, and in case you want to use it or whatever.
Yep.
I mean, that would just be really interesting. And actually, you could ask the user, hey, I noticed you built this thing on DocsWriter AI. I've also produced this one just brute forcing ChatGPT. Do you see any difference? Do you have any preferences? What's the difference to you? I mean, that could be part of your iteration.
Absolutely. That's great. I love that.
Yeah. I think that'll be fun. I mean, so super fun conversation, Alden. It's good seeing you again too.
It's good seeing you. Yeah.
Yeah, I always loved your energy. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up? This has been great.
No, I think that's it. It's just it's been really fun, and it's just fun to build something. And I think I mean, one thing I think it's my advice to other folks who are doing similar things like this, is and part of the reason why I built this pilot is it really helps when you have an idea to just build something.
Yes.
And to make it real. And I think that's true. Like, even if you can't build an actual prototype or pilot, at least make a nice deck or something as if it already existed. That's the key thing. And in fact, I wrote the website for DocsWriter.ai before I built the app. I think that. Yeah. I've approached my whole career that way. I try to like something that I want to make real. I start with making the website or making something as if it already existed. Like, if you make a deck, don't make it a deck about pitching, like a pitch deck or a thing. Make it like, no, this is real. This is how it works. Exactly how it works. Imagine that state in the future that you're trying to create. And then, and go as far as you can on that so that it becomes real. And then somehow things have a way of magically getting you there.
Yeah. I love that approach. It's similar to the kind of Amazon press release where you're talking about the thing as if like we're launching it today, kind of.
Yeah.
It's also a good way to filter through, because a lot of product people are ideas people, and we come up with like new ideas every few hours sometimes, and many of them do not pass that initial document test where you're writing the landing page, or you're writing the sales deck, or you're writing the press release. And I think for your idea, it's so cool how you just went out there, you made the landing page, and then you built this early proof of concept. And you're going to learn so much more from this than pontificating or reading a bunch of blog posts or whatever. Like, you just got to get out there, right?
Right. Including the feedback that you just gave me earlier, right? Was like, go do a head-to-head test with ChatGPT and see and measure. Give yourself a measurement. Like, that's great feedback, and we can do that because it exists.
Yeah. I love it. Well, Alden, we'll have to have you back on maybe after the new year.
Yeah.
And you can either, hopefully it'll be great news, like it's become even more awesome. Or if there's a curveball, it'll be kind of fun to hear like, oh, what did you learn? Because this is a journey that we're on now.
Absolutely. Love to. Sounds
Love it. All right, Alden. I'm going to let you go, but thanks for coming on the show, and best of luck to you, my friend.
Great. Thanks so much, Tom.
Take care. Bye. All right. So Alden Desoto, if you want to try out his thing, just go to docs-writer.ai. He's paying for the inferences, so you might as well give it a try and then give him feedback. He's a good guy. So even if you're like, hey, this isn't that good, I could have done it myself, like that's really helpful to him. And knowing him, like, I would imagine that product will get better and better. So check it out. Couple other things before we wrap up. I am teaching a class. If you're on the live stream, I'm teaching a free class tomorrow about AI and product management strategy. The class is on Maven. So it's one of their lightning classes. I think I have a couple hundred people signed up. So it should be a fun group. I doubt all of them will show up, but how do you sign up? You just go to, I'll show you. You go to maven.com, then you go browse lightning lessons, and then you select lightning lessons. Okay, then you select product. And then, oh, wow, there's 250 people signed up now. So then you just click here, sign up for free. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a real world case study of a major retail bank that is trying to evaluate how do they use Gen AI to make sure that they're staying competitive. And we'll look at unpacking the industry, understanding the company, and then evaluating what their AI options are, and then assessing the risks as well as the opportunities, thinking about prioritization and trade-offs and things like that. And then I'll share kind of my own personal views on what I would have done if I were the protagonist. So as many of you know, my classes are super interactive, so this will be no different. And then this Sunday, I will be starting a much more kind of in-depth class on the same topic. And I will show you that one. That one is product strategy in the AI world. Those are 90-minute classes. There's actually 3 of them in the course. That's kind of like the lightning class is kind of like an amuse-bouche for the real one. So the real one, it's got 4.6 rating. Cohorts are capped at 12. It starts this Sunday, and we're going to look at 3 HBS classes. One is going to be on the AI wars between Google and Microsoft. And then another one is going to be on Coursera's foray into Gen AI. And then a third is going to be an AI first startup called Otto. And those will be super interesting. Those are my favorite classes on Maven to teach. I'm also teaching, which is my most popular class, is starting in October. And that's about how to nail your product reviews, as someone who's done a few of them in my day. So that one's called Mastering Product Reviews. I'll show you. Claire, where is it? There it is. Okay, share. This one, that cohort is starting in October 3rd. And that one has 5-star rating, 5.0. That one's very interactive. We'll go over exec reviews, exec summaries, trade-off tables, presentation styles, supporting slides, and then there's like some optional one-on-one coaching from me. So check that one out. You can see all my classes on, if you go to maven.com/TomL, that has all my major courses. And then my lightning one is free tomorrow. And just go to Maven, go to lightning and product. I'll be there. And then lastly, if you haven't, I have a Substack that is pretty cool. Goes by the same topic as this podcast, Fireside PM. So you go to firesidepm.substack.com. You can see I just did one about thinking about different types of product management job opportunities, and then this 2x2 kind of matrix around missionary versus mercenary type opportunities, and then high floor to ceiling compensation ratios versus high ceiling to floor comp ratios, and how to kind of think about different ones depending on where you are in your career. So check that out if you're interested. And hopefully this was useful for you. If it was, do me a solid and give me a like, and then comment below. What did you think of Alden's idea or our conversation? If you have any questions for me, let me know, and happy to try and answer them in the chat on replay. All right, let's get back to work. Bye, team.